Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a review for the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I usually do these reviews in a voiceover style, but I wanted to try doing it just kind of talking directly to you. And I want to do also one last look at the same time while I'm reviewing it. I've published about 5 looks now, and I've used every shade. I haven't used every shade in like every way you can use it, but I feel like I've got a good feel for how things perform in this palette and my opinion of it at this point. So out of the 15 shades, 7 of them are matte, so that's a good half and half split, half shimmer, half matte. And then of the shimmers, 2 of them are standard shimmers. They're what they call their metallic formula. Those are Travertine and Whisper. Those are, to me, they're like regular shimmers. They have all fine particles and they have a decent amount of reflect, but they're not what I consider metallic. They're kind of a little bit shinier than a satin would be, and they have very little fallout. Maybe no fallout at all. There are 3 sparkling foiled shades. These 3 are not all exactly the same. They don't look like they have the same finish. So the 2 bronze shades are a little bit less reflective. All of them have large sparkle and also fine shimmer, but the only one that is like really gives me a foiled effect is Muse. This is the most reflective one. And the other 2 are just like a little bit more subtle. I don't know about fallout too much. This one doesn't have like tons of fallout. It does have a little bit of sparkle fallout. These other 2 I'm going to wear today on the upper lid so I can get a better feel for that and tell you about fallout for those shades. The sparkling foils in this palette compared to the ones that are in the Yucca palette, the Yucca palette has, those are excellent quality shimmers in that palette, and they're all very shiny. I feel like in this palette the only one that's comparable is Muse. The other 2 are quite different. And then the last 3 shimmers in this palette are the new Wet Effect formula. And that Wet Effect formula is broken down into 2 finishes. So there's a sparkling wet effect and a glossy wet effect. So when I was buying this palette and I read the description wet effect, I kind of had like an idea in my mind of what that might look like. I thought maybe it might look literally wet or like glossy possibly. I thought maybe they might be like cream shadows. But these, in my opinion, I think they're all powders. They don't feel like creams to me at all. They are all sparkly. They kind of just look like shimmery, sparkly shades on the lid. I don't really get like a glossy or wet looking kind of look from them. The only one that's like semi close to looking that way is Mia. I would say they give me just maybe a slightly different finish than any other shimmer eyeshadow, but I would say just temper your expectations on what you think you're getting if you're going to buy the palette just for those shades. Let's see. And then I do want to say this shade, Delilah, has a lot of sparkle fallout. It has probably more fallout than what I find typical of shimmery shades from Natasha Denona. The rest of the shades, I feel like they're kind of about the same fallout they normally have. And let's see. I don't know what else to say. Let me see what's in my notes. Alright, I still want to turn the camera off. I really want to turn it off, but let's keep going. So I want to use, for this last look, there are 6 shades in here that I feel like they could have condensed down into 3 shades. So we have Stone and Mesh that are very similar. I think just one of those would have been fine. Wit and Vague are also pretty similar. Those are a little bit easier to tell apart, but still they kind of, if you're looking for like a rosy kind of counterpart to what else is in here. Like, we only really needed one of those. And then Ella and Filigree, these two bronze shimmery shades, are also pretty similar. I can tell them apart too though, because Filigree is a little bit darker, a little bit more pigmented, but still I feel like just one of those would have been fine. So for today's look, what I'm going to do is 2 different looks using all 6 of those shades, but kind of it'll be the same look, but one on one eye, one on the other. And I want to also do this as a wear test because I feel like I haven't gotten a consistent set of results as far as wear testing with these. I've had days where I've gotten very poor wear time and days where I've gotten like decent average wear time. So I want to do one last good wear test for this one. And if you haven't been watching me or following me for a while, what I typically do with wear tests is I use primer on one eye, no primer on the other eye, and I give it a good like at least 8 hours of wear just to see how things go. So I'm using the ColourPop Party Proof eyeshadow primer. Lately this is my favorite one and the one that has been working best for me. So it's the one I've been using for a while. I feel like I'm really all over the place with the way that I'm talking, even though I have notes and I kind of have an idea how I want to do this. I'm used to doing this in a very controlled way with the voiceovers and like cutting like all the excess out, like no random talking and things out of order, so this is very strange for me. Okay, so I'm just going to start out with Fair just as a transition and just to kind of put a little layer of powder here just above the crease to help with blending and also help with wear time. Not really meant to see it, just kind of help with application. And I feel like I have a little bit of a crease starting to happen already. I have very oily eyelids and the eyeshadows crease very easily on me. If I wasn't reviewing stuff, I would wear a primer all the time. There really is, like, I don't think any eyeshadows that would last on me without primer. Okay, and then I'm going to go into Stone and I'll put that on one eye. I do like the tone of this shade and the other one that's like it, Mesh. For being marketed as a cool toned palette, there is a lot in here that's not really cool tone. A lot of it is just neutral or even warm, but I think they did nice with a few of the shades that I consider to be truly cool toned, and this is one of them. I feel like it applies evenly and it blends really easily, and in general I've found cool tones really tend to be difficult, more difficult than warm tones. They don't seem to blend as easily, they seem to get patchy easy. And I like to, if I'm doing a wear test, I like to make sure I'm putting enough eyeshadow on to help with any oil that's gonna eventually break through. If I put on a really light, thin layer, it's normally not gonna last no matter what, like how good it is, it just won't. So I'm bringing this down a little bit here, especially in the crease. Okay, and now I'm going to use Mesh on the other eye, and then we can kind of see how easy they are to tell apart. This one's a little bit more pink toned if I have the two swatched side by side. Okay, so I can see that Stone is just slightly darker. It gives me more of that like shadowy kind of look in the crease. And this one, it gives me a little bit of definition, but It's just lighter, it's more subtle. And then let's see, what am I gonna do? I want to use these browns, but I think I'm going to use a little bit of this shade Tender on both eyes for some depth, and then I'm going to top it with those two bronzy shades. I guess I'll start with Ella, and I'm just going to use a dry brush to start out with. This one is, like I said, a sparkling foiled, and it does have large sparkle and fine shimmer in it. I also wanted to get a feel for fallout because I feel like I haven't paid enough attention to see how this is with fallout. Okay, it's got some fallout, but it's actually not bad at all. And I do want to see, can you notice like how it's not super shiny, just in comparison to, I don't have the comparisons here to show you, but like they are less shiny, these two sparkling foils, than the ones in the Yucca palette, so something to know if you are somebody that like follows formulas and you want a particular formula. I feel like they're not really all the same. Alright, and so now I'm going to go into Filigree on the other eye. The shade's a little bit more creamy. If I swatch with my finger, it feels creamier to the touch. I don't think it's actually a cream. I think it just is a little bit more of an emollient powder. But it does feel thicker, and it looks thicker too on the lid if I layer it too much. Okay, so Fallout is pretty similar on this eye as this eye. So those two shades they're pretty similar. Fallout, color, finish, very similar. One slightly lighter, one slightly darker. They're both not as shiny as Muse, which I guess I could use on the inner corner so you can kind of get a feel for the difference in finish. I'm just using a dry brush here too. I didn't use any setting spray or anything like that to dampen the brush. Oh, okay, so I have one more set of shades that are similar that I want to use. So that's Vague and Wit, and I guess I'm going to use them on the lower lash line because I don't really leave a spot on the upper part of the lid for it. So I guess I will use Vague on this eye. Then I will pick up Wit for the other eye. And I guess for good measure we'll use some of the sparkling foils on the brow bone. So I'm using Mia. I'm going to use that up here. Not sparkling foiled, wet effect. Sorry about that. And then I will pick up Sheen for the other eye. Those are two, they're actually very different. This one, Mia, is brighter and pinker, and this one is more nude, more neutral, closer to my skin tone, maybe even has a little bit of yellow undertones in it. I think my favorite out of all of the Wet Effects shades is the shade Sheen. It kind of gives a glowy effect, like if your skin is like, if you're kind of like a little bit sweaty or it's like kind of humid out, and your skin's just like really well moisturized, like that's kind of the effect that I get from it with a little bit of extra shimmer. There's the finished look for today with different shades on each eye, and right now it is about 10:40, so I'll wear this the rest of the day and update you later on how both eyes are wearing, and hopefully that you guys got something out of this. I feel like this was a little bit like messy and just, I don't know, it's weird for me to try to review things this way. Hopefully it's somehow still useful for you, and thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.